To enhance social equity in Singapore, a social mobility charity has outlined key areas in which there can be improvement, such as greater youth engagement, getting more corporate support, and diving into data analytics. Access Singapore's 5-year plan aims to run more programs and engage more vendors and social enterprises. The charity wants to create greater awareness by targeting youths as young as those in secondary schools. Early career exposure through professional sharing or apprenticeships are examples of such engagements. It also knows there is a current lack of research on the local social mobility scene. Access hopes to get data from the government or survey companies so that it can provide better interventions.
We want to understand in certain neighborhoods, do they have a resource gap? In certain neighborhoods, do they have more resources? And then how can we potentially bridge the gap? For us, we don't just see having data, but data and analysis, really understanding the data and providing recommendations.
Another focus area is the need to redefine success, like material wealth or good grades. Education Minister Chan Chun Sing says the real success for students that they understand their strengths and weaknesses and contribute back to society accordingly.
Try not to just define your success based on your personal accomplishment. Try to define your success also based on your contribution. And you will find joy and meaning when you can contribute. And I think that's also my hope for all Singaporeans and for generations to come, that we are a society that is not defined just by our material success.
And for more, we're joined by Clarence Ching, founder and executive director of Access Singapore. It's a social mobility charity. Thank you for coming in this evening, Mr. Ching.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, as we just heard, there's relatively little research on social mobility in Singapore. But you have managed to come up with, in your own words, a relatively basic one that shows 51% of your respondents, 1,000 people, found Singapore becoming more unequal over the last decade. You also say it's time to move beyond data to understanding, analysing, and thus providing recommendations. Now, if you look at just this 51%, why do you think that has happened? What would your recommendation be?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's important that we then take a step back and understand how this all pans out. I think for this is really a baseline. What we really want to do at the end of the day is really to provide more recommendations based on these statistics. It's very high level. So what we plan to do down the road is to have more surveys being done. So for example, when we talk about 51% of respondents think that Singapore is unequal, why not we can go deeper and understand, okay, why do they think it's unequal? I think for us as a small charity, we want to expand on that further. In countries like United Kingdom, for example, they go very deep. For example, what neighborhoods are more affluent than others and why is it so and how can they do more to tackle that?
So your feeling is that the deeper that you can go into this issue, the more we'll learn about it, and therefore the idea is the higher the chances that we'll be able to solve in a way this issue or to make a more equitable social mobility. Is that the goal, and how achievable is that?
Yeah, I think it is. Why I say so is because when Access started, we focused a lot on programs. Along the way, what we've realized is that Singaporeans don't understand the concept of social mobility. It's still very new. It's very related to Gini coefficients, for example. But what about using career guidance to tackle social mobility? I think that's what we really want to do at the end of the day. So advocacy, it's an important element, which is why survey research data is so important for us to advance that. So the next stage, as part of a 5-year plan, is really to see how can we then make a deeper dive into data.
Okay, it could be a terminological thing which you need to then clear up with me. So unequal is one thing, social mobility is another thing. You could be very mobile, but at the end of having all these things that promote mobility, it's still a very unequal society.
No, it certainly is. I think for us, what we recognize is that there are some things that we can't tackle. No one is going to be equal in Singapore. What we want to do is then provide the right tools and resources to give students or give youths the leg up. And for them to make use of the resources and decide, okay, what do they want to do with it? Do I want to go for it? Or do I still want to stay in my shell. I think that's what we're looking at Access. And we work with a range of students, secondary school students, and this year we're working with tertiary students on pursuit programs. It's really how do you harness resources at the end of the day.
So you've made these 5 recommendations. Can we go a little bit deeper into exactly what you've proposed?
Of course. So the first is really a deeper data-driven lens. I think as mentioned earlier in our conversation, data is so important. How can we go deeper? So the second one really is focused on redefining success, which I think Minister Chan mentioned earlier. I think for us, when we talk about redefining success, it's a lot about, okay, how do we recognize that we are potentially have assets? All of us have assets. I think that's one. Number 2, then how do we then have stories that folks can share with us and motivate them? So at Access, we started a campaign called Rewrite Our Rules. The idea is to put together stories by different individuals, from everyday Singaporeans to high-profile celebrities. And the broad idea then is they come from a disadvantaged background. How have they made it? And the idea is to share with other secondary school students on how they have made it and give them some motivation. Now, the third one really is about corporate responsibility. I think for us, corporates play a huge role, because when corporates run programs, for example, mentorship programs, there are employees that have a wealth of experience. Went through School of Hard Knocks, for example. How can we get them to mentor disadvantaged students? And these are so important. Social capital, at the end of the day, is what gives them a lot of confidence and aspirations to achieve wanting to do more. The next one is focused on working together as a community. I think that's important as well. It's not just for corporates, but also government as well as community sectors. I think all of us need to come together to work together. The next one really is a lot about making sure that we all take care of one another, and also then it's a broad collective of everything together.
It sounds hugely broad. In fact, it seems two ways. So on the one hand, and I'll use your words, so you give everyone, we're born with different assets. I'm just less bright than, say, Dawn. But whatever I do have, you are giving me the tools to make as much of myself as I can. And then I redefine success by saying, given my disadvantaged brain, as an example, I have still made as much as I can and given back. Yeah. So in that way, I am less. It's unequal.
Yeah.
But I'm able to accept that and still find meaning in that. Is that it?
Exactly. So students we work with, some of them are not academically inclined. So what we do is that, why not we play on your strengths? Being street smart, being good at communications, for example. How can you harness that and then make potentially a career out of it? Right? Like for you guys, right? Communication is so important. I think that's a key in ensuring that we unlock opportunities and give them the right motivation at a young age. And for us, we prioritize early intervention so that at least we give them the confidence right from the start and they can move on to. So essentially, our job really is to set them up for success.
Yeah.
A redefined success, though. Very difficult job there. Thanks so much for coming in, Clarence Ching, founder and executive director of Access Singapore. Thanks so much.